Hi everyone, welcome back to the 35th Annual Virtual Multicultural Festival. Today's event for 3 p.m. is a traditional fashion show and tell where we will have five high school students from Guelph Collegiate Vocational Institute joining us today and telling us a little bit about their cultural clothing. First up, we have Raina Chang.
Hi everyone, my name is Rena and I'm a grade 10 student at GCBI. And today I'm going to be showcasing the qipao, which is a traditional dress in Chinese culture.
Awesome, thank you, Raina. Next, we will be having Kimberly Tran.
Hey everyone, my name is Kim. I'm a graduating grade 12 student at GCBI and I'm headed to the University of British Columbia next year. I'm half Laos and half Viet, and today I'm going to be showing you guys the traditional Laos dress, the Sin.
Thank you, Kim. Next we have Rafe.
Hi everyone, I'm Rafe. I'm also a graduating grade 12 student. I'll be heading to University of Guelph next year, and I'm from Pakistan. I'll be showing off the shalwar kameez, which is a traditional Pakistani outfit.
Awesome, thank you, Rafe. Next we have Shay.
Hi everyone, Shay. I'm also a graduating grade 12 student, and next year I'll be going to University of Guelph as well. And I will be showing you a traditional clothing from Nigerian culture.
Thank you, Shay. Next we have Sonia.
Hi everyone, my name is Sonia. I'm also a graduating Gale this year, and I'm from India, so I'll be showcasing a traditional dress known as the Lehenga Choli.
All right, as you can see, we have a variety of cultures and clothing in store for you today. So let's get started with our first one with Rena.
Hi, as I said before, my name is Rena and I'm going to be showcasing the qipao. So this is what mine looks like. I hope you guys can see clearly. And I'm sure some of you guys might have probably seen these types of dresses summer before, maybe in movies or shows, or perhaps in some fashion shows. And they're usually designed so that they can nicely accentuate your figure, and they're traditionally made from embroidered silk, and many of them have embroidery of flowers, dragons, phoenixes, and birds. And they usually have high collars and cloth buttons on the front of the dress as well. But they come in a huge variety of different styles, lengths, and designs. So a lot of them are also custom made, and they can be tailored and designed to the wearer's liking. So qipaos have a very long history. And back in the 1600s, when they were worn as everyday clothing by the upper class, they used to symbolize wealth and literacy, as originally only very wealthy people could afford them because they were made from expensive silks and were custom made. But nowadays, they're created with a wide variety of different fabrics, such as satin and cotton. But they're usually only worn for special occasions now, like weddings and formal parties. So the qipao, as I said before, has gone through a huge number of changes throughout its history. And the traditional qipao was very loose and long, and it was an outfit for both men and women. And then around the 1920s, it had its most dramatic change. So this is when the styles of the Western world kind of inspired some changes within the traditional Chinese style of the qipao, and the dress became more form-fitting than it originally was. The dress also got shorter, and many were also created with a high slit along the side, and this is how the dress became the more modern style of what it is today. So I do think it's pretty interesting how this dress, even though it's one of the most recognized dresses of traditional Chinese culture, how heavily influenced it was by Western culture. And I think I just saw a question. So do I prefer the satin or cotton material? I'm going to be honest, I think I only have the cotton ones. I think both are probably pretty comfortable, but I do have satin pajamas. So I think both work well. So I have three of these dresses, although I think I might have lost one because I haven't seen it in a very long time. But with how I got these dresses, the story is actually sort of interesting. So all the qipaos I own were ones my mom bought for herself before she came to Canada around 20 years ago. And before she came, she believed that as a Chinese person, she wanted to be able to represent Chinese people and culture once she came to Canada. And she ended up spending a whole bunch of money buying a lot of these dresses, and she's not worn them a single time since she's gotten here. So my mom really values comfort over style in her own clothing, and she realized that there was no way she was going to be able to wear them on a regular basis because they're a bit restrictive movement-wise and not always the most comfortable to wear, which is probably also one of the main reasons they're not worn very commonly nowadays, even in China. And actually, the dresses that my mom bought, the only times they've ever been worn were by me. So in my own life, I actually haven't been able to wear these dresses that often, which is kind of unfortunate. And this would be the third time I've worn a qipao before. So the other two times I actually have worn it was back in grade 5 when I was doing a presentation on Chinese history and culture, which I think was a pretty good presentation. I think we did pretty well on that. And once a couple years ago when I did a dance for the Multicultural Festival with some of my friends, which some of you may have seen before. I think it was back in 2016. So wearing this dress really makes me feel more connected to my own culture, especially because all of my relatives live in China and I've never really been able to see them very often before. And qipaos are really very beautiful dresses. So when I wear them, it almost feels like I'm dressing up for a special event, which is very exciting since I don't get to do that very often either. But since I was born and raised in Canada, I've grown up with more exposure to Western culture, and I haven't really been able to carry over a lot of Chinese culture into my own life, besides occasionally celebrating Chinese New Year or the Mid-Autumn Festival or speaking to my grandparents and my parents in Chinese. So it does feel really great to wear this dress once in a while to remind me of my roots and where I come from and to connect with my own culture and family. I do think I got another question. Where would you usually wear qipaos? Well, nowadays they're worn more for specific celebrations like weddings or maybe very fancy parties. So I'm sure some other people might also relate to how I'm feeling about wearing kind of your own cultural clothing, because as a second generation immigrant, you're always going to experience some cultural differences. And it sometimes feels like you're losing a part of your own culture when you grow up in North America, because the country that your parents grew up in is not the same one that you're living in right now and the one that you grew up in. And I know in my experience, at least, it's especially disappointing when you experience some language barriers or even cultural barriers with some of your relatives or even with your parents and your direct family. So there's another question. What is your favorite occasion to wear qipaos? Well, I definitely wish I do. I definitely wish I wore them more. But if I ever did get invited to a wedding, that does sound very fun to wear one. So I would like that to happen. Yeah, so again, I'm really grateful that I got this opportunity to wear this dress and showcase the history and traditions behind it. And I definitely did learn a thing or two preparing for this presentation, and I hope that maybe you guys did as well while listening to me. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival, as well as the next few presentations. I'm sure they're going to be awesome. So have a nice day, guys. And if anyone has questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, thank you so much, Reina. That was so great to hear, and I'm so glad that you got a chance to wear your qipao today. I think, yeah, our last question was just, what was your favorite occasion to wear it? And you've answered that, but if anyone has any other questions, feel free to add them into the chat. And yes, you look absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Do you wear more of the traditional ones that you were talking about, or do you have more of the westernized ones that are more modern now?
Definitely more of the more westernized ones. I think the traditional ones went out of style like decades ago, but they probably still have them. I think sometimes like for tourists, you can wear them and they'll help you take pictures and stuff. Yeah.
That's adorable. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your beautiful dress with us today. After Reina, we have a comment. We can't see the entire outfit. Do you think you could maybe move back a little bit to show us the whole dress? Maybe, yeah, tilt your camera down a bit. Amazing. It looks beautiful. Yeah, we have a comment from Amanda, a very classy look of qipao.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for joining us, Reina. All right, and next we are going to have Kim join us today to talk a little bit more about Laos cultural clothing.
Hi everyone. So like I said in the beginning, today I'm going to be showing you guys the Laos traditional dress, which is the sin. So to start off, I'll just do a little spin. This is what it looks like. So just to give a brief overview of the dress. So the sin is typically worn in everyday life by women in Laos, but here in Canada and other places that are not Laos, typically it's only worn for special occasions. This can be events like going to the temple, attending a wedding, or for New Year celebrations. If you ever have a chance to visit Laos, though, you'll run into Laos women wearing simple sins with very little decorations, and typically they're with very neutral tones. These women will generally wear these clothes to work in the fields or to sell agricultural products. So it's very common in the rural parts of Laos. But you also, if you have the chance to attend a formal Lao ceremony, you will see many Lao women with colorful scarves like these ones, blouses, silk skirts, and a lot of gold jewelry. In regards to like what this is actually made out of, they can be silk or cotton. The more formal ones tend to be made out of silk. And they cost around $2,000 for the high quality silk. This is not one of those, but they can also come at around $100. And I typically get mine from my grandma. She used, like before COVID, she used to go to Laos like every winter because she definitely did not like the snow here and was not used to it yet. So she would always come back with new dresses for myself and my cousins and my mom. And yes, it's very similar to the traditional dress that is worn in Thailand. As for like the specific parts, this is for an example of a formal sin. And it definitely wouldn't be worn to be working in the fields, but more like an occasion, like a formal party or something like that. So there's the sin part, which is the skirt. It's pretty long. It goes to about like your ankles, and then there's your se, and this is just a blouse, and there's also buttons, and then there's the pa, which is a long piece of silk. It's about a foot wide, and it's usually worn like this, wrapped across the chest, or it can also be tied so it's diagonally across your whole body. Additionally, in formal settings, there's also a lot of jewelry and accessories that are worn with this outfit. As well, women typically wear their hair in something called a gao pom, which is a cone-shaped like fake hair piece that just makes your bun like taller and more neat. I don't have one with me today, but those are typically worn, and they're usually decorated with either gold jewelry pieces or flowers like this one. This is the Dok Jumpa, which I believe is the national flower of Laos. And then for the specific sin again, traditionally the style is reflective of the region that the woman wearing it is from. Because of the specific techniques that are used to produce it vary whether you're in like the northern or southern part of the country. So for example, the weaving products of the south are renowned for the intricate patterns of elephants, temples, and Khmer influenced designs and features intricate beadwork. And the Northeast people often use raw silk and cotton and tie-dye the raw silk known as matsmi or ikat. But all of the sins are typically very beautiful and they're carefully made. And it's become a really big part of Laotian culture. But similar to what Rena was mentioning, as time progresses, the clothing is starting to become a little more westernized. So there are some Western influences, I know, specifically in North America, with the hyper on luxury brands. A lot of sin producers are inputting like Louis Vuitton or Chanel designs on the dresses, just for those people who want those, the idea of like a fancier looking sin, but there's definitely still those traditional aspects in Laos. As for the skirt again, there's actually three parts of the skirt. There's the hosen, which is the top of the skirt, and then you typically wear a belt. I usually have to wear one because this is actually my mom, so it doesn't exactly fit me perfectly. And then there's also the prinsen, which is the body of the sit, and it typically features some embroidery. It's generally pretty simple in comparison to the silk scarf. And then there's the bottom of the skirt, which is the teen sin. And then I'm just going to speak briefly about the traditional clothing of the men in Laos. So they typically wear something that's called the sarong, which are baggy, flowy pants that come in various colors. They're typically worn with a traditional button-up dress shirt and knee-length white socks, and then a pabyang that looks something like this, but it's a little less intricate. It doesn't feature like the same embroidery. It tends to be more plaid. And then the ones that I've usually seen are in red and blue. And then similar to the sin, they're typically worn for only special events and ceremonies. But contrastingly, this is the same in Laos. So the sarong is not worn for informal occasions. Like in everyday life, they wore regular clothes that you would see like in Western culture. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed me sharing a little bit about my culture. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thanks. We're having a lot of comments that you look beautiful and people love the belt and the colors. I truly think your outfit looks beautiful. Can you tell us what the difference is between a Thai and a Laotian dress, if you know?
I'm actually not completely sure. From what I've seen, they tend to be really, really similar. So if there are any differences, they're pretty small because I feel like their cultures are generally really closely tied together.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of shoes would you wear with this outfit?
Again, it depends on the type of occasion you're going to. So I think in Laos, they would typically wear like simple sandals. But I know like I've attended a couple Laos weddings and everyone's wearing like super fancy high heels. But yeah.
Have you ever found it hard to walk in heels when you're wearing a long skirt like that?
Definitely. And in general, like the dress is pretty restrictive in movement. So like even like the shirt is like a third quarter sleeve. So sometimes it's like hard to move around. But you get used to it, I guess.
And I know you mentioned the hairpiece. Have you worn one of the hairpieces before?
I have. Yeah, I used to participate in Laos fashion shows. It's just for the Laos New Year's, we usually have a ceremony where like 12 girls, which are representative of, I'm not sure what they're representative of, but they're 12 like women in Laotian history. And basically each year there's like a bowl that people draw names from, and then one of them is selected as like the Laos New Year representative of the year. So I used to participate in that a lot, and I would always wear the hairpiece, but I don't have one with me today.
That's so cool. That's really cool to hear. And you participated while you were living in Laos?
No, in Canada. So usually the temples that are in Canada run it. There's a couple around this area as well that I go to occasionally.
Okay, and when is Laos New Year? It's probably not the same as the Western New Year, right?
No, it typically takes place in the spring around April.
Okay. So
yeah.
Summer. That's great to hear. Thank you so much for sharing, Kim, and you look really beautiful.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right, next we have Rafe.
Hi everyone, I'm going to be talking about Pakistani clothing, so just to give you a quick overview. Just a quick spin. And showing just like the bottoms you would wear. So this clothing is typically worn at cultural events, such as Eid or weddings or just going out for different kinds of events. And just a brief history about it, the name actually, shalwar kameez, actually defines what the clothing is. So a shalwar is basically a set of trousers or pants, and then a kameez is a tunic or a top that's worn with those pants. So it kind of defines what it is, and it's pretty similar to a lot of other cultures since Pakistan's a relatively new country. A lot of the fashion, a lot of the culture is inspired off of surrounding countries, such as other Asian countries like India and other countries in the Middle East. And as time has progressed, the fashion has also gotten a lot more modern with more Western styles. So just talking about the differences between men and women. So for me, and for typical men's clothing, they're really just the two pieces, the shalwar and the kameez. So just so you can see, this is what a typical bottom would look like that we would wear. So as you can see, it's pretty big and it's there's a lot of space, a lot of fabric. A lot of Pakistani clothing is made to have comfort in mind because a lot of times when we pray, we need to have that mobility and need to have a lot of ways to move because of the ways we pray. So that's one of the major things that's involved with Pakistani clothing. And the clothing varies a lot from depending on the event. So a lot of times just normal workers in Pakistan or whatever the normal kind of things you would do in the day, you would just wear a normal simple shalwar kameez, which is basic colors such as blue, gray, black, and those sorts of things, and there wouldn't be any sort of crazy designs or prints or any of that. But then you can go all the way to the extreme with weddings and things like that, where you have lots of different designs. As you can see with mine, this is something you'd wear more to Eid. You can see there's more printing happening on the design, and there's more embroidery and stuff like that, and more interesting colors. So it really depends on what kind of event you're at. The more interesting part is women's clothing. So I actually a sample of what my sister wore last year. So this is a sample of women's clothing. So as you can see, it's a lot more intricate. There's a lot more details and embroideries. There's a lot more layers to it as well. This is more of a style where you have a shirt underneath and then you'd wear this over top. Another thing you see commonly in women's clothing is a scarf or a shawl because a lot of times when women have to pray, they have to cover their head. So a scarf over the shoulder is a very common thing. And I have three sisters and my mom, so you can imagine when we ever go to cultural events, the attention's drawn towards them more than it is to me. But it's pretty interesting as well because there's a lot of extra details such as charms at the bottom and a lot of other things as well as frayed sleeves. And one common thing is the colors that you see. So men usually would not wear gold, and as well as these kinds of fabrics, it's more reserved for women, and especially the types of clothing that they have. So a lot of time, basic clothing is more standard fabrics such as cotton and other sorts of things like silk. A lot of times the charms and embroideries you'd see mostly on women's clothing, but with major fashion houses advancing a lot in Pakistan and spreading out to other countries, you see that kind of stuff go towards men's clothing as well. For example, the piece that I'm wearing has more embroidery on the chest and on the collar, and there's also more interesting designs. So just talking about a little bit about the fashion industry in Pakistan. Pakistan has a really big fashion industry with almost 10% of the exports from the country being some sort of fashion related thing. So fabrics, clothing, charms, bracelets that you would wear, those sorts of things. So it's a really big industry there. And Pakistani fashion houses have expanded a lot in the past 10 years with almost 100 locations worldwide for some of the biggest fashion houses. And one thing with Pakistani clothing is I feel like and especially in the culture that I'm brought in, so I'm more Southern Pakistani, and I feel like we go very overboard a lot with clothing and that sort of thing. There's kind of an unwritten rule where you need to have a new piece every single time, especially if you can afford it because you want to give a good impression. And one of my favorite stories is as some people know, Eastern weddings, no matter what country you're from, they're very grand and there's a lot of things going on. So I remember one time when I went back for a wedding, every other day was a new event we had to go to, and then my mom had a new outfit for each of me and my siblings every day, and I was just like, where did you get all this clothing from? I don't get it. And then I found out that the Pakistan's culture is actually really inclusive when it comes to renting clothing and donating clothing for people who might not be able to afford it, because we want to make sure that everyone can support each other and look the best that they can for these events, such as Eid, they're going to pray at the mosque and that sort of thing. So that's kind of one of my favorite things is how tight the community is and how we support each other in that way. So a question in the chat is there a significance to why there is a color and design difference between men and women's clothing? Yeah, so Usually for men's clothing, especially traditionally, so a long time ago, 50, 60 years ago, a lot of times when men had to go to work, their clothing was more utilitarian. So there would be more basic colors, it'd be more free flowing. There'd be a lot of less intricacies because they had to do lots of more physically demanding work, but that's obviously changed as culture has progressed. And women's clothing, there's actually specific restrictions for men and women for based on what clothing they can wear. So men aren't actually allowed to wear gold on their clothing or have gold charms. So that's why it was more reserved for women's clothing. And embroidery was more of a thing that was developed as Western culture went along with men's clothing. So a lot of the differences are just how the culture in Pakistan has taken from countries around it and the Western culture as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about Pakistani clothing. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing all about, yeah, the fashion and history, and all the colors look so beautiful in the clothing. It's so funny to see how we have a common trend of Western culture really influencing our own cultural clothing. Looks like we don't have any other questions in the chat, but what would be your favorite occasion to wear your traditional clothes to?
Oh, it would definitely be Eid, which is a celebration that we have after Ramadan, which is a month of fasting. It's just generally on Eid, people are really happy because it's a big celebration, the biggest one of the year. And a lot of times, like I mentioned with the community, a lot of times people try their best to get really nice clothing, and a lot of big fashion houses try to donate as much as they can. So everyone tries their best to have nice looking clothing and to look the best that they can. So I feel like it's a really great time to see how people's own personal beliefs with clothing are expressed, because a lot of people, especially now, they wear lots of cool and interesting clothing items. So it's just really cool to see how different clothing can get and how interesting all of it is.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And we definitely had a great time learning all about this history with you. Thank you so much, Rafe. All right, next we have Shay.
All right. Hi, everyone. So as I previously mentioned, my name is Shay, or my full Nigerian name is Oluwaseyi Fumi Adenike Oyediro. So right, I'm from Nigeria, and more specifically the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria. We have multiple different tribes. I think we have about 371 tribes in Nigeria. The most known ones are the Yoruba tribe, Hausa tribe, Fulani, or Igbo tribe. And within these different tribes, they also have the different clothing, different foods, and different languages. And within those different languages, they have different dialects. So for example, in Yoruba, we have 25 different dialects. All right, so I'm gonna go into what I'm wearing. I'm wearing something called an Iro Ububa. This is what it looks like. I'll just do a quick spin. All right, so this is the top. It's called the buba, and basically it's either short sleeved or long sleeve. The short sleeve one was worn more during the 1930s or to the 1950s, but it's changed to the more long sleeve version of that. Right, so then we have the bottom. It's called the Iro. It looks kind of like a skirt, but it's not a skirt. It's actually just like a wrapper that you kind of just tie around your waist. Yeah, and to avoid any wardrobe malfunctions, because it is possible that it can fall off, we have like an underwear that you wear. It's either a full-length dress that goes to like a bit above your knees. It's just white, or a skirt, so that in case anything does fall, yeah, you have something to protect you. Yeah, so then we have this, which is called the Asha OK. But that's what the clothing is called, but the actual thing is called Ikele. So it's typically worn either over the shoulder or can be tied around the waist. Yeah, and the Asha OK is actually traditionally woven material. It's either worn like this, and there's usually a matching cloth as well that can be wrapped around the head like this. This is called the gele. This is not Asha OK. I'm not exactly sure what it's called. It is a different material. You can probably hear it's kind of like crinkly or whatever. So when it is being worn, it is kind of it's really loud. It's like right in your ears. But yeah, and going back to the Iro, the bottom, you have to make sure that when it's being tied, you stand shoulder width apart, with your legs shoulder width apart, just to make sure that when you do end up walking around, you're able to move freely. If you're trying to get upstairs, you can actually get upstairs without falling or tripping. Yeah, so this is more of the traditional female wear. I have an example of what men usually wear. It's also called a buba. It's longer, it's a lot longer. And typically it's worn with pants instead of a skirt. Yeah, yeah. So the style of Iran buba has changed over the years because I guess the younger generations, they don't really love how it looks because they think it makes them look old, like their mother or their grandmother. They have changed the style to something called oleku, which is the same like buba but instead of iro, it's more with a shorter iro to make it look like a shorter skirt. Yeah, so that's that. It's also short sleeved as well. And the Iran buba can be made with different types of material. This one is made with lace. I'll show you what it kind of looks like. I don't know if you can see it, but that's what it looks like. It can be worn with lace, but it can also be worn with something called Ankara, which is actually in many different like different countries in Nigeria. Sorry, in Africa. However, in Nigeria, we called it Ankara. This example of what it looks like. They're very brightly colored material. This is another example of what it looks like. There's that one and this one. So yeah, the Iran buba can be made with either lace or the Ankara. And the Ankara can actually be made into many different things. It can be made into the Iran buba. It could also be made into blazers. It can be made into skirts, to pants. I actually have a jumpsuit here that my mom made for me. I think 2 years ago. But yeah, it can be made into so many different things. It can be into purses, to bags, to shoes. I actually have a friend who has a notebook, and the notebook cover is made with Ankara. But yeah, so that's a bit of Nigerian culture, Nigerian clothing. I hope you, I hope you learned something new. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
That was great. We have a lot of comments saying that your dress looks super cool and we all love the headpiece. It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you usually get ready and put on the headpiece and dress by yourself, or do you usually have someone else helping you?
I'm not experienced in doing it, so my mom had to do it for me with the wrapping of the iro and as well as the tying. Yeah, I cannot do it on my own.
I can relate. That's
Yeah.
put on a sari. And I noticed that I think your outfit is white and then you have the blue.
Yeah.
It's typically more of a neutral tone like this, or do they also go more colorful?
I think there are other colors. Like I have other colors that are green. There's some that are pink. I think I just want to go with white because it's like I guess like just a neutral tone, and then I could just match it with anything, and I decided to match with blue. But I do have a version of this that's green. My mom did want me to wear it because it's like the national color, the flag, like the colors of the flag, so green, white, green. But I went with the blue. But thank you.
You can mix and match too.
Yeah.
That's nice. Gives more variety that way.
Yeah. I don't know if I mentioned where I wear it to, but it's typically worn for more like big events. So like to church, for weddings, for big celebrations, birthday parties. For weddings, we actually have a three-part series type thing. So on Friday, it's something called the engagement, which is when like families come together and I guess like give away their children. And that's where the bride actually wears something that looks like this, except with ashoke that matches. And then on Saturday, it's like the church wedding, the typical church wedding with the westernized wedding. And then on Sunday, it's like just like a Thanksgiving type thing, like a thanks to the Lord type thing. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And I love that you said the one piece can be made into like different things like shoes, bags, notebook cover.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, just go on Pinterest and search up Ankara and you'll see so many different designs and stuff. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
For joining us today, Shay.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, it looks like everyone's saying you look amazing and you're so cool. We definitely learned something new from you today.
Thank you.
Is it spelled Ankar, UNCAR?
Oh, it's spelled ANKARA.
Ankara. Good to know. And we
Or
have,
just African print.
okay, perfect. And we have another question. Is the headpiece heavy?
No, it's actually really light. I barely feel that it's on. It's just a bit tight, but yeah.
Looks like it's made of a light material, so
Yeah, especially since in Nigeria it's really hot, so nothing too heavy. Yeah.
that makes sense. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Shay.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and last but not least, we have Sonia.
Hi everyone, Sasya Kal. My name is Sonia and today I'll be doing a demonstration of Punjabi cultural clothing. Although this is a cultural demonstration, I believe that everyone's experiences with their cultures are quite unique and different. So today I'll be sharing with you how I've experienced the Punjabi culture so far in my life. I was born in Punjab, which is a northern state in India, in a family that follows the Hindu religion. So I've been honored with the opportunity to celebrate and rejoice in festivities of both cultures. That being said, I think my perception of Punjabi and Hindu cultures as distinct cultures, it reflects rather a mixture of the two, much as my ability to speak Punjabi and Hindi as two distinct languages, which is something my parents and relatives actually love to pick on, but it's just something that I've been exposed to from a very young age, so it seems very normal for me. Today I'm wearing a cultural piece of clothing known as the Lenga Choli. Hopefully you guys can see it. Do a quick spin. The name actually reflects the piece of clothing. So the Lenga is the long skirt, and then the Choli is the fitting blouse, and it's often worn with a dupatta or a fancy scarf, if you will. The skirt is usually secured at the waist, and there's typically one size fits all, and then there's a string that you can tighten the waist with. And they usually come in a variety of colors as well. And then for the dupatta, the lenga is actually, usually it's left bare at the midriff area. So the dupatta can be used to cover the midriff, or it can be worn around the arms like I have it here, as well as to cover the head. It really just depends on the occasion, and then of course your own preferences as well. The Lenga Choli has a very rich history dating back to the 10th century, where its arrival in India was sparked by a group of settlers known as the Mughals. The original ancient form of the Lenga was mainly stitched from cotton, and then after evolving and after many generations, you had royal fabrics come through, such as silk, and then embroideries like brocade as well, making the Lenga further evolve into royal attire. The Lenga Choli today actually still continues to undergo many transitions with time, with a lot of cultural influences, really molding its silhouette and style in the multiple versions of the Lenga known to us today. Talking about traditional styles, there are actually quite a few variations to the Lenga, known as the Sharada, the Garada, and the Lecha. I had the chance to receive the Sharada. I think it was one of my first ones, and I'm very excited to wear it. I haven't had the chance to wear it yet, but it's like this very beautiful maroon color. So hopefully COVID restrictions loosen up a bit and I get invited to a wedding very soon, so I get the chance to wear it. All three pieces of clothing, nonetheless, they're usually saved for very ceremonial purposes like Diwali or weddings as well. And then the color and detailing of the pieces can vary depending on age, the festivity, and your preferences as well. The piece of clothing, as maybe you can tell, it's actually quite restrictive for movement. And when the skirt is paired with a pair of heels, walking up the stairs can be quite the hassle. But I think the restrictiveness of it actually adds to its royalty. So it adds to the royalty of the attire as well as the person modeling it. And it looks especially elegant when you see people performing in lengas with their long skirts flowing around with the music. It just brings the performance and the elegance to a whole nother level. There have been many occasions when I've been able to wear this piece specifically, and I think it's become one of my favorites. I just love the emerald green color, and then the lenga as well. I don't think you guys got to see it, but it's a very plain gold color. So it can be paired with a lot of different cholis or tops, which I actually love. I, along with my sister and mom, have actually been complimented on the styles and traditional clothing that we have. And I have to give a quick shout out to my masi, or my aunt in India. As I mentioned before, I was born in India and then I moved to Canada when I was 3 years old. So it was just our little family, myself, my sister, my mom, and my dad, with the rest of our relatives living in India, even till this date. And I'm so thankful to my parents for keeping my sister and I connected with our native ties, whether it was continuing to speak our native language at home, our Bollywood Friday movie nights, or getting the chance to visit India every few years. It definitely helped me to stay up to date with the Indian fashion, but it also added this element to my life that now I just can't imagine being without. So that was a bit of my personal story. Getting back to the year that I first wore this lehenga, I clearly remember it being the summer of 2017. That was when my grandparents visited Canada for the very first time. And they brought this suitcase full of souvenirs from home, including this lehenga. That summer, I actually also had my first chance of attending an Indian wedding in Canada. I think it was one of the more memorable ones because I had attended weddings before of my aunts and uncles in India, but I was very young at the time. So this one was an especially memorable experience for me. I'd only actually seen Indian weddings in the movies before. So just being there in person for all of the ceremonies and then just seeing everyone dressed up to be as excited as I was to be at the wedding. And then I think my favorite part of the night was dancing on this packed dance floor. I mean, as you can imagine, given the current circumstances, I think that was an especially memorable time for me. I miss it so much in the present day. But I think events like these are so special because it gives you the chance to embrace your cultural roots, but I think more importantly, to celebrate them as well. Over the past couple of years, I've slowly been collecting and refining my Indian wardrobe. When I was younger, and I think even today for a lot of the younger children, the clothing they wear is typically kept consistent or the same for all occasions. But as I started growing older, my collection of traditional clothing broadened, with a lot of the clothing actually being a lot more simpler now for the more casual occasions, which I love because it's actually a lot more comfortable too. I think traditional clothing definitely is not as prominent here in Canada as it is in India. I know whenever I visit, I see just about all the females dressed in traditional suits. Of course, they're not usually as formal as these. The clothing and the fabrics are typically catered towards the weather conditions in India, but then they also allow a lot more mobility just for the daily chores and tasks that females have to complete. But I think as our multicultural community is definitely evolving, cultural clothing is becoming a lot more prominent. So I guess that's very exciting. And that was everything for me. Thank you all for listening and tuning in. I hope it was as much fun and educational for you as it was for me. It definitely gave me another chance to wear this lehenga again after such a long time, which I really loved. But thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Sonia. We have lots of comments here saying that the green and gold combination looks beautiful together and the gold and sparkles and glitter look awesome. Do you think you could take the camera down a little bit and show us the full outfit?
Yeah, sure. Can you see it?
Yeah, beautiful. So we have the skirt going all the way down to the bottom. And
Yeah.
we wear this in typically more fancier occasions or more casual everyday occasions.
This is definitely for a bit more of the fancier ones. I actually have another piece right here that I just got recently. It's on the hanger, so you might not be able to see it as well. But it's the print and the fabric is definitely a lot more simpler than the one I'm wearing right now. So this is definitely for a lot of the casual occasions rather than the lehenga that I'm wearing right now.
Is there a difference in the material between the two?
Pardon?
Difference in the material between casual and more formal?
I think the more formal clothing is typically silk, and then the casual ones are definitely a lighter cotton, so it's a lot more easier to move around. Yeah.
And perfect for the weather in India as well.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for sharing. And could I please have everyone else come on camera so we can have everyone with their cultural clothing together? All right, let's add you all to the spotlight. I think Bryn and I are doing it together, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This is the GCVI high school students that are showing their cultural clothing. Thank you, and a big round of applause to you all for coming out today and sharing all your history and clothing fun facts with us. It was really enjoyable and educational. And yeah, it's so interesting to see all of the variety of clothes that you have. Thank you so much for coming out with us today, guys. Maybe if you want to give a little spin and have everyone see your full costume. Amazing. Wow, look at that. Thank you so much again, guys, for coming out today. You did awesome.